If you've been on this channel before, you know that I love talking about Smash Ultimate and that the meta is disastrous. People hate on it constantly. They hate Rob, they hate Pyramithra, but how is the old meta doing? How is 2019's meta doing? The characters that we knew were probably going to fall off, but you know, we didn't expect them to fall off as hard as they did. Characters that we considered top tier or even top 5 that are now considered near high tier or maybe even mid tier. We're going to talk about that today. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. I would always appreciate the support. I know it's been a long time since I've been on the channel, had a lot of stuff going on, but I am back and am ready to talk about the game again and do a lot more interesting stuff for the channel because, you know, talking is fun, but playing would be also cool. Getting to meet you guys, doing streams, I would love to do that. So thank you guys all for the support and let's get into it. First, let's talk about the mid-tier killer, Palutena. Palutena was very simple. You nair a bunch of times, you throw them off stage, down tilt their recovery, back air them, rinse and repeat. She was so easy at the beginning of the game that a lot of people had secondary Palutenas, and she was so consistent because of her invincible moves that most mid-tiers would hate to run into her. Any character you hated, whether it be the heavies, projectile spammers, she would just seem to have beaten. And even though that was true, it felt like she didn't have that X factor that made her really that broken. So people weren't as upset when they fought Palutena. Yes, there were people who were upset, but there weren't as many as people would have the outrage of Steve or Sonic, because there were a lot of ways to beat her. She was fast, but not so fast that you couldn't catch up to her, just fast enough to be able to pressure you a lot. But you can still use your spacing, using your movement, use projectiles, because even though Reflector is big, it doesn't mean that you can't ever use them. It just felt like she was a normal Smash character. Yes, she had 2 invincible moves that were disgusting, and her spacing isn't that complicated, but you know, parrying made it a lot easier, and there were a lot of characters that did decently, that weren't that hard to play. No matter how much you would claim to hate Palutena, you had to admit, you weren't dying at 0, you weren't dying at 30 even. If you were dying, you probably got extremely red with a down air, and that's pretty much it. She was good, but she was never crazy. I think that kind of shows how she actually is nowadays. It feels like there are some crazy Palutenas out there still. We still have Zai, we still have Chag, we still have Louis Money, where Flo has become amazing. We still have a lot of great Palutenas, but she doesn't really do that crazy well against the meta. She does probably decent against Sonic, probably decent against Steve, but not so much that you would want to pick her up instead of just playing someone like Pyramithra or Cloud or Kazuya. She's just in that spot of a solid character without a lot of nonsense. As I've said many times in this channel though, a lot of people don't want no nonsense on their characters. They want that X factor, that kind of thing that makes it so even though they're even with somebody, they can just press a button and just get the stock or live a super long time. And Palutena's thing is probably just spacing, probably just having consistent moves that don't really drop. You can always edge guard, you can always just be there because you're fast enough, but she doesn't have that I have a 0 to death combo or really cheesable option that makes her coveted by a lot of people. That's why you don't see that many Palutenas instead of seeing Clouds and Snakes and Robs. But when you do see a good one, you have to remember, she has some nasty things. Back air and dash attack are still really good, her combos are really consistent, and she doesn't really have a gigantic weakness other than it maybe being a little hard to hit small characters. That can be enough for some people, but I think Palutena is consistent enough to still be considered really good. Maybe not top tier because of, you know, the no X factor, but solid enough to say that she is still meta relevant. Next up, we're going to be talking about my favorite character to play in the game, Mario. Mario was the king of having it all. He had nasty confirms, he had enough speed to catch up to everybody, he had a projectile to make it so he can mix up in neutral, he had gimping tools. He seemed so good at being the jacker of all trades. Even if he was just the master of one of those things, people used to think Mario was close to top 5. Back in 2019, when Dark Wizzy was the best Mario in the world, he was beating a ton of players and getting top 8 really consistently. It felt like Mario had it all. He always had an answer for the meta at the time, because you have to remember, without the Fighter Pass 2 or a lot of the DLC, what answers did you have for Mario? The game was in a very different state. So Mario had no Cloud because Cloud Snap wasn't that good, so you actually get flooded a lot. Had no Sonic because people just didn't realize how good Sonic was until Sonics went out and he destroyed people. No Game & Watch because people thought Game & Watch was still bad. No Kazuya because he wasn't out. All of Mario's worst matchups just didn't exist, and the characters that technically beat him so slightly that they were just as susceptible to getting 0 to death as everyone else was. It's really odd to think about because the more the game progressed, you start realizing that a lot of Mario's worst matchups just became relevant, became part of the meta, and now he has a matchup spread that just isn't that great. Against the top tier characters, he probably is even with what? Rob, with Diddy Kong, probably those two characters, Pikachu, but he struggles a lot with the top characters. Steve's here, Sonic's here, we have a lot of tough matchups. But even past all of that, there was one big change that happened that I really think put Mario's results in the tank. It's Luigi becoming good. The fight between which Mario brother was better lasted a long time and still is kind of being lasted to this day, because while you always could pick Luigi for the explosive combos, Mario was known as the neutral brother, the one with options to be able to get in on characters that Luigi couldn't get in on. But then Luigi's got better. They started hitting their up B confirms, they started using down B more aggressively, using Zair to zone way more, and these characters that technically beat Luigi, it doesn't matter because he always can kill you no matter who you are. And then Mario just seems a bit underwhelming. Yeah, he could kill you at 30, but he needs a positional advantage combo, and it doesn't really work on everybody. Yeah, he has a good neutral, but a lot of people have good neutrals. He can just be out neutraled a lot. And now you're getting to the point that most people think they either go even or beat Mario. And I think it probably had something to do with just how explosive Luigi became to change people's perspective on what they value with the game. Now it's not all about neutral. Now it's not all about trying to win as many neutral exchanges as you can. It's about killing somebody as low as a percent as you can, as fast as you can. And those characters seem really coveted now, to the point that while Mario is one of them, people forget, he isn't as valued as Kazuya or Luigi ever will be. Meta shift aside, I really do think Mario is an incredible character, and these matchups that I do say are bad for him aren't so bad that you won't see Mario players like Snow or Kurama or Dominator doing well and putting in work with the character, because people forget he is a Kazuya, not as broken as Kazuya, but he still does a ton of damage and has incredible combos. It's just going to be that kind of thing where, what do you really value? A character with a lot of evenly good stats, but still can kill anybody, which makes it so he has more even matchups than these characters, but also makes it so he loses, or just being able to touch to death everybody. I don't know. I usually am just the person who prefers to have my stats a little bit more spread out, because I feel like when I lose as Kazuya, you probably lose a lot harder than you would with Mario, but I get that people want to value just being able to kill super early and having extremely strong moves all the time. To say Mario's outside of the meta is a bit harsh, but he doesn't really counter it that well. He's just a solid pick, and I do think there are places for solid picks, even if they're not destroying everybody, to be reminded that they are very, very good. And I think Mario still stays there, even if he struggles a slight bit. And lastly, we're going to be talking about Olimar. Olimar is that type of character where no one knows how they do against him, because it feels like when you fight a bad one, you just mash on them and then you win. But when you fight a good one, man, they do so much damage and it feels like you can't touch them at all. Olimar has just always been that character in the meta, and it feels like that's never going to change. Think of all the characters you think probably beat Olimar: Cloud, Joker, Wolf, Fox, Mario, Pikachu. Think of all the characters that can just mash like crazy, get rid of Pikmin really easily, always seem to just be right in front of him, and then you fight one, and it's like, wow, my stuff's not really connecting against this character. Oh, Pikmin blocked my attack and I got punished for it. Man, this damage is really adding up. Why am I at 90 all of a sudden? That's what Olimar is. He's the type of character that feels like everyone should have an answer against him, especially because he's nerfed now. Back then, his smash attacks did so much more shield pressure, and it made it so whenever he smash attacked on your shield, you would take so much damage, to the point that Olimar was considered one of the best characters in the game, and it felt like you couldn't touch him, especially with old meta. Like, think about old meta before you had Steve or really Sonic doing that well. You were just getting bombarded by Pikmin, and now this meta is kind of falling into that same trap. A lot of your stuff clanks, and a lot of stuff just doesn't work, and it feels like Olimar's game plan has never changed throughout the 6 years that it existed. The biggest development you see is maybe them plucking a Pikmin and then grabbing, but not really anything else. You still want purples, you still want blue to kill. It's just the most basic game plan that still the top Olimars have basically mastered. I attribute a lot of Olimar's success to Shuton, who, while he has a Pyramithra and has messed around with a bunch of characters, has always had the Olimar there to beat a ton of people and has remained near the top 10 or in the top 10, I can't remember exactly, for the entirety of the game's life, which is probably thanks to his Olimar mastery. It feels like he's one of the most difficult people to hit in the world, so Pyramithra does match a lot with his playstyle actually. So it's just nice to see someone be that consistent with the character that people don't know how they feel, but I know how I feel. When Olimar hits you, he hits you like a truck, and even when he's not hitting you, he's pressuring you from a mile away, begging you to do something, because if you don't, it's gonna add up and then you die. This is such a sleeper character that even if he doesn't look like he does that crazy on the matchup spread, he always just does well enough to be that Bowser space in bracket, and I always respect Olimar for that. If I were to speak objectively though, I don't think Olimar's matchup spread is really that bad the more I think about it. Yeah, he probably does struggle against Steve like everyone else does, and Game & Watch I can see not being that good, but I mean, I still think he would beat Kazuya. I still think he would do well against Rob and Peach and, you know, those types of characters that have to deal with his constant pressure. I don't know though about some weird ones like Snake or Fox. I feel like Fox would just be kind of hard. Olimar's just one of those characters, I want to say things for sure, but every time I talk about him or talk to someone about him, it feels like he's just that high tier character no one knows how to fight until they fight him, and then they fight a good one, and then you forget all the rules, you forget what you can hit with Pikmin with, you forget what Pikmin does what. You really don't forget that, but you forget what Pikmin has that extra attribute. I forget all the time that yellow has an extra hitboxes on it, making it bigger. I forget all the time how much Pikmin or how much purple health actually is insane because of how they work. And then you just see like weird shield break setups. Like, this is, I don't know, when it comes to getting matchup checked, I think Olimar is one of the best at it, and unfortunately you don't see him that often, so whenever you fight one, it's probably one of the best players in the world at the character, or top 50 in the world like Candle or Shuton or any of the Japanese Olimars. So I don't know, maybe Olimar does really suck. Maybe we just need to see more Olimar players, have more counterplay, and then he'll actually fall on the meta. But because of the people who play him, I don't see it. You'll see how, weirdly enough, there'll just be 6 Olimars in top 100 and no one bats an eye. Because if you don't know, you just be like, what? But if you know, you know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you. Have a good day.